Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for watching this video. I'll be asking two of our lovely English tutors and one of our English student ambassadors some frequently asked questions, which we hope will be really useful for you. So my name's Rebecca. I'm the Outreach Officer for the English faculty.
Hi, I'm Sos. I'm one of the English tutors at Brasenose College.
Hello, I'm Lynn. I'm an English tutor at Regent's Park College.
Hi, my name's Neetu and I'm a third year English student at Pembroke College.
Fantastic. So the first question is how much language is involved in the English language and literature course? And will someone be at a disadvantage if they haven't studied English language at A level? And that question's to Sos, please.
So there's only one half of one paper that's compulsorily on English language, which is a first year introductory paper in which we teach students everything you need to know about linguistic analysis. So it's absolutely not necessary to have done English language at A level. It's always useful in the way that any English you've studied in any way can be useful, but that's your choice. And that's the only compulsory element of the course that's concentrated on language, but you can, if you wish, do special options in your third year on language. You can write your dissertation in an area of language if you wish to. And of course, linguistic analysis is something after you've covered it in that first year paper, you'll be using throughout the degree if you wish to, and in whatever way you wish to. There you go.
Lovely, thank you. Next question, do you have to have really good GCSE results to make a competitive application for English? And that question's for Lynn.
Yeah, thanks very much. Well, GCSE results, we look at them, they're important because obviously they show us that you're good at passing exams, and that is important when it comes to studying any degree course, and particularly studying at Oxford, because you will be taking exams at the end of the first and final year. It's also good to see your abilities across a range of subjects, but we don't have any hard and fast requirements for GCSE results. Obviously, we want to see that you're doing as well as you can, but we also, the information that we have from each candidate is we know how well you're performing at your school, which is perhaps more important when it comes to GCSE results than what the actual results are. So we know if you are outperforming the other students in your school, and that's more important for us to know that rather than to actually see what your results are. The other thing to say about GCSE results is that we absolutely understand that sometimes things don't go to plan, and however hard you've worked, and you may have been predicted very good GCSE results, but something happens in your life that affects how well you perform in GCSEs. So make sure we know about that. Ask your teachers to put something in the reference, maybe about that, or so that we understand the context under which you've taken your GCSEs. So I think that that's probably the best answer to that question. But yeah, so it's important, yes, but also we're not going to say that you must have 12 A stars. That's not what we're looking for. Yeah.
That's really helpful. Thanks, Lynn. Brilliant. So next question is for Neetu. As a student, so how big is the leap from school level English literature to what you learn at Oxford in your experience?
I would say that the leap is pretty big. I would say that in your first term, and I guess that's at any university, you do feel quite intimidated by the amount of work that's required on the course because there is a lot of reading. It's English. I mean, that's what we do. But at the same time, I would say that by the end of that first term, it does become quite manageable. I think some of the key things are probably, firstly, having regular essays. So 1 to 2 essays a week does become a big step up. And the second thing is learning how to write essays and just not talking about kind of context and analysing quotes and actually realising broader literary movements that we're working within is something that I would definitely say the Oxford course really emphasises at the start of the degree. So yeah, it definitely is a big jump up, but at the same time, by the end of the first term, you do get very much used to it.
Thank you. Excellent. So about the application process and actually what you're looking for in a candidate. So are you looking for a broad range of historical knowledge, or are you more looking for a particular interest in a specific area or era upon applying? And that question's to Sos, please. Oh, you're muted, so sorry.
You're
Thanks.
right, sorry. We're not looking for any specific knowledge at all. So huge number of students have done very, very different A levels or IB or other qualifications. And some people have done, say, English alongside sciences or alongside, I don't know, dance and art or something like that. So in that sense, what we need to know is that applicants are enthusiastic, that they're readers, that they're open-minded, that they're curious and so on. If you do have historical knowledge or knowledge of the literature in any particular historical period, that's great. It gives you a little bit of a base to build on as you go through when you come across that period. But at the same time, very few people really have a kind of grounded knowledge of any one area. And because the course is incredibly broad and goes all the way from Anglo-Saxon to present day, nobody has knowledge of all of that. So the basic thing is we teach you once you're here, and you learn a huge amount once you're here. So what we need to know is that applicants are keen on reading, are engaged with their reading, are ready to think for themselves exactly what they know. It varies with every single applicant, and once they're here, every student can use the knowledge they've got to build on and follow their particular interests. So if you've got historical knowledge of any particular period, fantastic. If you've got a little bit all over the place, great. If you have none at all, you're going to have it very soon after you arrive.
Wonderful, thank you. Next question's for Neetu, if that's all right. So how do you manage your work-life balance? This is a question that gets asked quite frequently, so I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts.
I think I kind of do it in two ways. The first thing I would say is planning is really important. Oxford kind of works by a week-to-week schedule. So knowing what you're doing on each week is really important. So I have a diary or a journal, checklists, Google Calendar, all of it. I'm sure we all do. And that helps me really keep organized. The second thing is I try to plan my social life around my work. So if I know I have a deadline on a particular day, I'll make sure that the kind of few days before it and after it are not kind of overwhelmed with social activities. I'll make sure that I keep them quite separate. So yeah, those are the two main ways I try to keep that work-life balance.
Great, thank you. An application question now for Lynn, if that's okay. So are there any texts to avoid mentioning in a personal statement? So for example, are there texts that are referred to a lot that don't make you stand out as much?
No, not at all. We really just want to know what you're reading and what you're thinking about what you're reading. So the idea of avoiding writing down a book that you particularly enjoyed and would like to talk about seems just a bit odd. We wouldn't want you to do that at all. I think probably I would say that what we're looking for, as Soz has already said, we're looking for people who love to read. So we want to know that you've stepped out of your A-level syllabus, for example. So it's obviously, it becomes very clear to us as tutors what the A-level texts are as we read through personal statements, because they come up regularly. But what really perhaps distinguishes people is when they've gone beyond that, when they've used that A-level text as a starting place for making other discoveries. So no, there's nothing, that you shouldn't put in your personal statement. What we want to hear is what you think about what you've read, even if it's a very familiar book. It doesn't mean that there's only one thing to say about it. The great thing about studying English is that there's always lots to say about the most familiar texts. And it may be familiar to us as tutors, but if it's the first time you've read it, it's not familiar to you. So we'd like to know what you think.
Fantastic, that's really helpful. And following on from that, are there any particular genres or periods of literature that it might be useful for prospective students to look into in particular?
Well, all genres, all periods. Again, this kind of echoes the question that Soz had a little bit earlier. It's really thinking about genres and periods, not concentrating on any particular genre or period. So showing us in some ways, have you started thinking about why a novel and a poem are different from one another, for example? What makes them particular? And thinking about how poetry works as opposed to prose. So we're much more interested in those kind of aspects than, say, you must have read an 18th century novel in order to be successful at Oxford. That is not at all how it works. You're going to have plenty of 18th century novels to read once you get here. So we're not looking for any particular reading. There's no list of texts or genres that we think you should have read before you get here at all. We want to know that you love to read. I always say that you have an irresistible urge to read, that your life is poorer without a book or at least 20 books in it. So that's really what we need to know.
Wonderful, thank you. You've talked a little bit about books that you might mention in a personal statement, for instance, but often we get asked whether you can talk about things like documentaries, podcasts or lectures in a personal statement. Is that sort of thing allowed as well?
Absolutely, because that shows your wider interest in the subject of English, but it also shows that you're thinking about what texts are, what literature is now. You know, what's the difference between listening to a podcast from reading a text, for example, reading a book, an actual book. But the lectures, podcasts and documentaries, those supplement your interest in English. So probably don't spend a lot of time talking about them at the expense of talking about the literary text that you're reading, but show how having listened to a documentary or watched a documentary, how that's enhanced your reading, how it's maybe told you more about something that you've been reading, rather than writing about it a lot in your personal statement, because you haven't got a lot of space in your personal statement. So you want to use that space as effectively as possible.
Excellent, thank you. So the next question's for Soz. A question that we are asked quite often, are deferred entries allowed for English?
Yes, really simply.
Great.
Absolutely. Yes, often it's a good idea if you know what you'd want to do with that gap year, with that time after you've finished your school exams and so on, then you can say something about that. But ultimately, if you're a really good student and you're absolutely clear that you want to start a year later, then you're completely free to apply a year in advance. So post, or after you've got your A levels, or your IB or whatever of the results, if you didn't get in the first time, you can always reapply. And a certain number of people first applied with deferred entry and didn't quite make it, and then apply again after that. So yes, there's absolutely nothing to lose from applying for deferred entry if that's your preference.
That's great, thank you. If you're someone who speaks English as a second language, will their application be less competitive compared with British students?
No. It doesn't matter where you're applying from or what your background is, or if you know 9 languages or only 1 language. You need to be really good at close reading English, understanding the nuances of English. You're going to be spending a lot of time looking at the kind of particularities of how English works and so on. So you're going to need a really high level of English. But it doesn't matter what else you know alongside that. So yes, if you're good at English and you know 45 other languages and English is your 45th, and I am only inventing that, I'm not expecting that from anybody, then fantastic, that's great.
Excellent, thank you. Another application question now, if that's all right, for Lynn. So can you please give some advice on the written work that students have to submit if they're applying for English language and literature?
Yes, of course. We've been thinking long and hard about this because we're very aware of, obviously, as we all are, of the impact of COVID-19. And one of the things that we've been thinking about and talking about is what the effect on your applicant's ability to produce written work might be. So what we're saying this year is that, yes, obviously we still need to see your written work. We would like to see a piece of written work from you. But we would understand if there have been some difficulties with getting it marked, for example. And we would normally ask for a piece of written work that your teacher has marked, and then it isn't revised after that. Just send us along the marked piece of written work. But we understand that may not have been possible this year. The most important thing about written work is that it shows you your best. That you should be selecting a piece that shows your strengths at writing and thinking about literature. And so a piece that hasn't been marked is fine. If you've been drafting a piece maybe for an EPQ or an extended project, and you'd like to send us an extract from that, we would really like to read that as well. We would normally be looking for something that was doing some kind of literary analysis. Again, this year we're saying if that means that what you're going to send us is a piece of close reading, for example, or a response to a short extract, that is also fine this year, because it shows us your ability at writing and thinking about literature, and that's what we're interested in. It may be appropriate to send us a piece of work about responding to ideas of English language as well, if that's what you've got. The most important thing is that you explain the circumstances under which you produce this piece of work. And when you submit your written work, there's a cover sheet that you have to fill in. There's space for you to explain the context under which you produce that work, and also for your teacher to explain as well. So please make sure you fill that in and explain. And the tutors will be reading that as well as your piece of written work. So the more information you can give us, the better. I'll just go back to what I said. We want to see you at your best. So choose that piece of writing that you think best shows us your strengths and abilities as somebody who wants to study English at Oxford. More information on the website, by the way.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Lynn. That was really clear. Thanks. Also, I mean, talking about coronavirus, interviews, how will interviews work this year? Okay,
so this is still a work in progress, but I want to reassure you immediately that the university and the English faculty are working very hard at the moment to ensure that our interview process goes ahead as close to normal as we can make it. The interviews will be all online. And at the moment, there aren't any finalised plans, but we're working at the moment with schools to try and arrange that people will be interviewed in their schools. So that's probably the most definite pieces of news that I can tell you at the moment. But information will be coming out from the university as we get closer to the application date and also to the interview, so that you know exactly how that's going to be arranged. So keep checking on the website. This information will be coming out once we have it. Yeah. Do you want me to say anything about how it will, work with, because as I think most people know, we usually do a kind of piece of work with text as part of the interview.
That would be great. Yes, thank you.
Again, we're working on this to ensure that those poems and texts that tutors like you to analyse in an interview make sure that they get to each individual candidate securely. I want to be very clear about that. So again, we're trying to replicate our normal processes as much as we can. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. That's great. So next question for Neetu. What kind of extracurricular activities are available at Oxford?
There are so many, so many. I remember Freshers Fair, I was absolutely overwhelmed in a good way of just how many things there are to do outside of your degree. In my own time, I do some journalism. So I've been head editor of a student journal called the Common Ground Journal. I've been president of a society, which is called the Oxford South Asian Arts Society. I've worked within a college as part of our JCR, or a junior common room, which is kind of like a school council. So I've worked with them as a publications representative. So I definitely get up to a lot of stuff outside of my degree. It's also though about managing it. So there definitely are loads of things to do, and there will be anything and everything you want when students apply. And if the things that you want are not there, then create it. And that's what I did. So we worked together to create and build up a society where we celebrated the South Asian arts and had annual showcases and club events for everyone to join. So there's definitely everything and anything.
That's amazing. Thank you. Fantastic. And Another application question now for Lynn, if that's okay. So what's the application process like for mature students?
I'm answering this question because I studied at Oxford as a mature student, so I've done this. So that's why I'm going to be talking to you about this question. In many ways, the application process is exactly the same. You fill out a UCAS form, you sit the ELAT, and if you're shortlisted, then you will be invited for interview. You submit written work in the same way. So the application process is no different in many ways for mature students. I suppose obvious the differences are in terms of GCSE and A levels, there may be a different approach taken to those examination results, depending on how long ago you did those examinations, yes? And it's that gap between those qualifications and your application that's important. Because if it's quite a big gap, and in my case it was quite a big gap, colleges will consider other things. They're not going to look at, saying, well, you must have these grades. They're going to be considering other things that demonstrate your interest in English literature. So it may be that you're deciding to study English and this is a complete change in tack for you. So how do you need to be able to demonstrate, just as the applicants from schools would, that you have a real interest in English. So think about how you might be able to do that. I would suggest you might want to look at the university's Department of Continuing Education, for example, where they run short courses in things like critical reading. So that you might decide that you want to do it as a short online course that would show your interest in wanting to study English, and also give you something that a tutor can look at and say, oh yes, I can assess your success in that. And also in written work, if you want to, you can produce a piece of written work, especially for the application. So you don't have to resurrect some piece from school if you don't want to do that. You can write something new and submit that. I think probably if you're planning to put in an application as a mature applicant, it's a good idea maybe to talk to colleges individually as well, to talk to admissions tutors and gauge, ask their advice, for example. Oxford has one college, Harris Manchester College, that only takes mature applicants, but every college is open to accepting applications from mature applicants. So yes, that would be my main pieces of advice. And do it. Oh, by the way, do it.
Thank you. So Lynn briefly touched on colleges there. So question for Neeti now, if that's all right. How did you choose your college?
So I guess there's three ways to choose your college. So the first one is you just kind of wing it, and you just kind of do whatever you want and just apply to any college. The second one is people who do a lot of research. And I think I would definitely recommend this option where, you make sure you check firstly what your tutor's interests are. So one of my tutors at Pembroke specializes in Victorian literature, and I knew that that's something that I'm really passionate about. I also knew that she does a lot of kind of post-colonial stuff within the Victorian period, and that's stuff that I'm really, really passionate about. So I made sure to research that. Also researching just the facilities of the college, so knowing the food, like the prices for food, accommodation, and any amenities in the college. Does it have a gym? Is it a central college? What's the cohort size like? And then the third option is kind of people who have had experiences of the college before. So I did an access summer school at Pembroke College when I was at the end of year 12, so when I was just about to start year 13, and I really, really liked it. I really felt like I belonged at Pembroke, and I think that's what was my selling point. After having that kind of lived experience of staying there for a week, I realized that I'd really, really like to stay there for the next 3 years. So yeah, I would definitely recommend the second option if the third isn't possible, obviously because of COVID, and because the first option is just, I think it's a bit too risky. So yeah, I hope that helps.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm also aware of students that do end up at other colleges as well, having applied to one then end up at another. So Soz, did you want to add something there?
Yeah, just to say, things that students often worry about on choosing colleges is the idea that you might apply to a college that's got far more applicants per place and you'd have less chance of getting in. And actually across the whole faculty, across the university, we've got really good systems for reallocating applicants to colleges with a lower number of applications. So you don't need to worry about how many applicants a college has got, because your chance of getting into Oxford as a whole will be exactly the same. So that doesn't matter. And the other thing is, it's really college preference rather than college choice in that sense. So you can state a college that you'd like to go to, but you may get reallocated to another college for your interviews. And because of the whole interview system and so on, it means that whichever college you end up at, the tutors at that college know you. They chose you. They were really impressed by your work. So they know, and you know, right from, you know, before you start the course, that you can work well together. So Nitu's absolutely right. It's, you know, brilliant if you've done lots of research, you know, about, you know, which college to choose and all the rest of it. But actually, you don't need to worry about that. And you're completely free to put in an application that doesn't state a college preference at all. And the tutors who interview you, who see your application, they won't know. So they could think that you've chosen that college all because of them, or you could have chosen it because you like the look of the buildings, or apparently the food was rated really high, or you could have stuck a pin in the map, or you kind of been computer allocated that college, and it will make no difference whatsoever to your application. So feel free to, you know, kind of do exactly what Nitu said and do some research and look at the college website and all the rest of it. Or if you really don't have a preference, or you're worried about, you know, which college to choose, just leave it open. It won't make any difference to your chance of getting in.
Excellent. Thanks both for those really excellent answers. Great. So another application question now, if that's all right. So this is for SOS. So you briefly mentioned this during a question at the very beginning, but we often get asked about the subjects that students are studying alongside English. So people sometimes worry if they're taking two arts subjects alongside English, they'll be seen as a more of a disadvantaged, say, against somebody that's doing a language or history or something like that. So is that true? Do you have any advice?
It's not true. Really simply, for English at Oxford, we require, and really talking A levels here or Scottish Highers or something where it's more subject select, because obviously for IB you've got that spread and so on. So if I just use A levels as an example, for that, basically you need 3 A's at A level, including English literature or English language and literature. That's our requirement. And an A level is an A level is an A level. So we don't have a kind of, this is an important and posh A level and this is another kind of A level. It's really genuinely, you just need those 3 A's at A level. And some of that is because we genuinely believe that whatever subject you're doing, and it might be drama, it might be dance, it might be art, it might be music, they're all testing skills. And those skills can be completely relevant. So, and exactly that span of, we're looking at literature in conversation as part of the culture of different eras, in conversation with historical events, in we're looking at not just text-based stuff. So exactly what Lynn said in the response to that question about is it relevant to put down to the podcasts and other kinds of, you know, documentaries and all the rest of it. Well, really importantly, it's not just written materials that you study when you're here. You're studying theatre in performance. You can look at things like literature in response to arts and music and fine art, and there's an incredibly close relationship between all the arts. So actually doing art subjects is great, and you'll be able to draw off that knowledge when you're here. So no, it's not a disadvantage at all, and that counts as well for people who've, say, done chemistry and biology or maths and further maths or something like that. That weirdly, you know, maths might seem completely separate, but actually I've come across tutors who teach the Old English and say students who've done maths at A level are generally really good at Old English. I think because they're used to that kind of technical thinking in that way. So even subjects that seem very, very far from studying the degree, you know, English language and English literature as a degree, it's amazing how those skills, the fundamental skills you're building up as you're studying a huge range of different subjects, are actually applicable and usable in all sorts of ways.
Amazing, thank you, that's great. So another question for Sos now, if that's all right. So what would you say is the single most important quality you are looking for in an English undergraduate?
Personally, I might actually say enthusiasm. So enthusiasm in the sense of a genuine love of the subject and a desire to know more, because that's what will carry you through the most. And ultimately, Lynn and I think probably Nito as well, we're sad sacks. You know, we get to read books and go to theatre and read novels and talk about poetry and all the rest of it and call it work. It's great, you know, and Lynn and I get paid for it, which is even better. And we're looking for students who feel the same, who absolutely love the subject. And that doesn't mean you love everything in subject. There are always things that, you know, don't speak to you or you find really boring or you have to drag your way through. But I think the thing that carries you through the most is genuinely a love of a desire to know more, a love of literature, a love of language and what language can do, how it works, words, all of that. So I'd say that's kind of that's probably a quality that I'd see. But I think anybody who's applying has probably got that. You know, it's why you want to carry on studying English for another 3 or 4 years or whatever. Other qualities, sensitivity to literary language. I mean, a real readiness to engage with the detail and think about it. A love of reading. I mean, you know, exactly what Niti said about how many books you're reading and so on. And that fits in with the love of it in that you'll have to spend a lot of time reading. So actually enjoying doing it. We want students who'll thrive on the degree. We don't want to bring students here to torture them with making them do stuff they hate. So I'd say, yeah, really, really simply, a love of English and a desire to know more. That's got to be, for me, the most important quality. But I don't, Lynn, what would you say?
Yeah, I'd agree with all of that. I think also flexibility as well, openness, yes? Being open to different and new things, you know, different books, different, you know, being wanting to be kind of taken out of your comfort zone when it comes to literary studies, but also being able to think flexibly, to make connections, just as you were talking about, Soz, with, you know, the different subjects, not just thinking this is just about reading books, yes, and it's also about thinking, oh yes, well, I could connect that to this other thing that I had studied, yes, that concept in maths, this seems to be really interesting, yes, or you come across a poet like John Donne who is fascinated by the science of optics, yeah, how you see, what perspective is, and suddenly you find yourself, you know, delving off into finding more about a scientific subject that you never expected to. So that kind of openness, flexibility, yeah, and everything else that you said.
Yeah, I agree with Lynn, absolutely, and that's why I suppose that's about why English at Oxford, and so much of it is about the fact that a lot of the way you're learning is in conversation. It's about your ideas and somebody engaging with how you, as a student, your genuine individual response to the material you're studying and so on. So it's that interest in thinking for yourself, in developing your ideas, but also in being engaged with, challenge, rethinking things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great, that's brilliant, thank you. So a question for Nitu now, if that's okay. So are there any opportunities for work placements or volunteering or internships during your time at Oxford? Have you experienced these? Do you know anybody that has? Any thoughts you have on that would be great.
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of options. So the first thing is there's always the option to work in the holidays or the vacation. That can be through kind of working at home, or wherever you live, as a part-time job, when you return home from Oxford, or working alongside the university. There are so many opportunities like this one today, where you can do a lot of access work or work with open days to support the faculty or to support your college. There are summer schools that you can work on that are internal to colleges or university-wide that you can work with. There's also the career service, and they offer loads and loads of internships, whether that be very, very prestigious ones whether that be smaller ones with local businesses in Oxford. So there's definitely a lot of employment opportunities. But the one thing I would say is that during term time, you can't work. As much as you can do a small kind of opportunity here and there, like giving an access tour to a school in your college or helping out with an open day, you can't have that regular commitment simply because you just won't be able to manage it alongside your studies.
Lovely, that's really helpful. Thank you, Neetu. And I definitely agree about the career service. It's a really great sort of resource. I've known students go and do all kinds of fascinating internships and things in the holidays. So thanks for mentioning that. That's great. Another question for Lynn now, if that's okay. So how do you cater for students with disabilities at Oxford?
Well, obviously, we do cater for students with disabilities. That's the first thing to say. There is a university disability advisory service which supports students while they're at Oxford, and that's across the range of disabilities as well. It can even, students who maybe while they're at Oxford discover that they had a as yet unknown disability can also access that service and get support. The support ranges from the practical, to ensuring that students are able to access everything that they need, buildings, text, lectures, whatever they need in order to support their studies. They can also provide mentors who will help on a regular basis. They will also supply scribes as well if needed, so a note taker to sit with somebody in lecture and take notes, or it will also help students access equipment that they might need as well. There's lectures, not just because of COVID-19, are recorded and available, and also our COVID-19 arrangements also mean that seminars also are available for students as well. So the University Disability Advisory Service is great and works across colleges, but because of the way that Oxford is organised into smaller colleges, each college has its own disability coordinator as well, who will work closely with students on an individual basis and foster their links with the university as well. So there is a lot of support available. I think that the most important thing is to start a conversation with a college, whichever college you may have been offered a place at early on. Let the college know what your needs are, so that conversation can begin very early on, and the college again can make sure that you're in contact with the Disability Advisory Service, so that everything is in place before you arrive. That would be the most important thing, I think. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So final question for Soz now. So are you able to take any modules or papers from other faculties if you're taking English as a subject?
So the English honours degree is not a modular degree. So in that sense, you can't, because you can do English with modern languages as a joint degree, you can do English and history, you can do classics and English, and there's obviously modular mixing together elements of each course and with bridge papers bringing them together and so on. But for English, there's a huge amount of choice within that degree, within our degree. So you can study film, you can study television and things like that. You can look at the relationship between English and the literatures of all sorts of other countries and other languages. You can do science and English, you can do all sorts of different things, but Oxford doesn't work on kind of modular degrees. So in that sense, you can't. But if something like you want to learn a new language, there's a language centre with extraordinary facilities for learning a new language. Just like Neetu said, if you whatever it is you're interested in, you want to learn about and do, there's a student facility for doing it. And if there isn't, you do exactly what Neetu do and you set it up. So in that sense, they're extraordinary resources. So whatever you're interested in or whatever other subjects you were pursuing at the time, there'll be talks going on in Oxford, there'll be seminars and workshops going on, there'll be student societies run for it. So you won't be able to do it as an assessed part of your degree, and make it part of your finals mark, but you'll absolutely, I will swear, be able to pursue it during your time here and learn more within it.
Amazing, thank you, that's great. So final question now, and it's for Neetu. So what is the difference between the Oxford English course and the Cambridge English course? I'm not sure if you looked at both, but if you did, do you have any advice?
Yeah, so when I was applying, I definitely looked at both. The reason why I picked Oxford over Cambridge was for two main reasons. I found that the Oxford course is broader, so it starts off with Old English and kind of continues on to present day, and that's something that I felt was really important for a quite cohesive and comprehensive degree. The second thing is the Cambridge degree emphasizes on practical criticism, which you kind of end up doing anyway within an English degree, especially at somewhere like Oxford. So that emphasis wasn't necessarily something that acted as a selling point for the Cambridge degree for me. So I ended up picking Oxford.
Fantastic. Thanks ever so much, everyone. So that's the end of our question and answer session. I hope that was really helpful to all of the viewers, and thanks ever so much, everybody, for taking part.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.